Ernie, when you were showing me all about this beautiful design of Sarah, I'm looking around the net trying to find her music. I looked at all of my services
Yeah,
and I
there's Sarah
couldn't.
McLaughlin. There's all these other Sarahs, but
Yes.
not that Sarah.
I looked and looked and looked, and I'm thinking, oh my, what am I missing? And as always, you enlightened me.
That's so funny. That's only because I'm older than you. That's when I was around when that happened. Yeah, they were a very strange group of guys. They were all guys, and to have a name like Sarah, okay, but then Sarah's No Lady as a title, it was like this little teaser because Sarah wasn't really a lady. It was all these guys, and their sound was like I had talked about. It was if you remember the time when it was happening. This was before Marshall Tucker. This is before Leonard Skinner. This is before some of the Doobie Brothers were just getting started with that Southern sound, and these guys just sort of. What happened was, one of the big assets that we had that the record companies didn't have was we had the groups and we had the managers and we had the road managers all in our corner. Okay. And Lee Dorman, from the bass player from Iron Butterfly and Captain Beyond, he was a big contributor along with Shep Gordon and Alice Cooper, obviously, and Burton Cummings, these people that believed in us and would really recommend us. And we became friends. I think I told you the first time I saw Black Oak, Arkansas, they were in a skating arena on Western and Sunset. It's since been torn down. I think there's a Target or something there now, something really important. And so we saw them, and it wasn't like anything we ever really heard. They were one of the early Southern sounds, and Jim was playing scrub board and Ricky, and they were just so animated. And Jim had no shirt on, and he's got this long blonde hair. He looks like a beautiful stallion, and he's got these spandex pants on that are tight like skin, and they're white. And he's all over that. He's more over that stage than Mick Jagger or David Lee Roth, and both those guys, I think, picked up from him. Obviously, the Rolling Stones were before Black Oak, Arkansas, but Van Halen, if you look at, how, his look was, and then you look at, David Lee Roth, and then you look at Jim Dandy, very, very similar. And Black Oak was out there before Van Halen, and so, but that's kind of what it is. They say, the imitation is the highest form of flattery. Well, I don't think that part of me doesn't agree with that. The other part of me says, well, if you can't imitate, how do you create? You have to sort of be influenced. When I say imitate, when I imitate nature, when I imitate someone I meet, when I imitate someone on the block, that we've talked on Facebook, and, that's all part of creating, imitating. And so I give them that. But to me, Black Oak was me. So we started doing a lot of work with them, with Butch Stone, their manager. And at that time, his brother, Butch was really good friends with Bill Clinton's brother, who played guitar or something. He actually had an album out, I think, or something. And Butch was really good friends with him, and they were really connected. In Black Oak, they made Butch a sheriff, in Black Oak, and they had a mountain, and they leveled it off and put a big fence around it and 7 houses. It was crazy. Mountain home. Anyway, these guys knew Butch. Bob Lefevre was the producer, and he knew Butch. And I think Butch was friends with Stan and Bill House, that were brothers in the group. And Butch, again, was probably just like Shep Gordon, by Bob Ezrin, Alice Cooper. They were great salespeople for us. And, excuse me, Butch was very, very happy with what we were doing with Black Oak, Ranch and Roll, that finger. It was just with the finger with the thimble on it, and just electric. And, and we had just a great time with them. And so Butch brought the producer, Bob, over with a couple of the guys from the band to the office. And this is like 1972. Okay. And we were now just getting known. Alice Cooper, Rolling Stones logo, Jesus Christ Superstar, School's Out, Cheech and Chong's Big Bamboo. All these albums were really happening at the same time, and the buzz was out there. Pacific Pioneer was getting known, and we were getting on the map. And again, maybe it's also because there wasn't that much competition. Outside of the record company being our major competitor, there were only a couple of Camouflage Productions that broke up. That was Barry Feinstein, a photographer, and Tom Wilkes, who was at one time the art director at A&M Records and used to use Barry Feinstein as a photographer. And he ended up leaving, and they formed Camouflage Productions. They broke up, and Tom Wilkes became partners with Craig Braun when Tony and I and Lou left. So it was like this crazy, incestuous group of people, and we got known. People were talking about us. People were talking about the stuff that we were doing. I told you, today we would be considered disruptive. We did crazy stuff. 13 buses that looked like submarines going down the for the RTD. I mean, crazy stuff that nobody else was doing, and we were doing it. Our major competitors, where we cut our teeth in the music business, okay, album covers, none of them were doing what we were doing, where we had one foot in music and we had another foot in corporate, because I never wanted us to get pigeonholed. I never wanted, and I tell people all the time, we're working on a book, okay, but the book is not going to be another album cover book. There's got to be 36 album cover books out there. We're in some of them. We're not in all of them, but it doesn't matter, because all they do is talk about album covers. Pacific Pioneer was much, much more than album covers. Album covers were what I consider stage one of a 3-stage rocket. Okay, you need that first stage to get you into a place where you can then shed that and go to the next one. And then right now, it's, 77, 52 years later, we're just connecting with stage 2. And we're moving into orbit, and things like Goldmine Magazine are starting to happen. I mean, it's just insane. The Block Party, all our amazing neighbors on the Block Party. And I'm sorry to get off track here, but, it's really important. We have such great friends and such great neighbors. And, we're starting a new year. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm loving you and loving what we're doing here. And I really love Sarah. They were very strange guys. So the producer and Bill and his brother Stan came, and so excuse me, they really liked what we were doing, and they said, okay, well, let's set up a photo shoot. Okay, and I had never seen the other guys, and I'm still thinking, Sarah, there's got to be a really pretty girl in there somewhere with that name. It's a great name. And so we set up a photo shoot at the Muscle Beach, at the beach in Santa Monica, and I'm there with the photographer, and we got the equipment, we're setting it up, and these guys show up, and I'm like, okay, and they're just really weird. They're weird guys. And they said, well, this is it. And I said, where's Sarah? And he said, we're Sarah. I said, oh, okay. I get it. I didn't want to act too stupid. But so we did this photo shoot, and we set them on a bench, and there were a couple of guys that were just around, and we put them in the shot too. And they had nothing to do with the band, but they thought that was clever. And because Sarah, I guess they wanted to keep the mystique of Sarah a mystery. There was something that they could base hype on or whatever. Sarah is no lady. And I mean, it makes you think, like Alice Cooper. Well, Alice Cooper must be a woman. No, Alice Cooper's a guy, and that really caused, craziness. And I think that part of that sort of dripped over here, even though Shep wasn't involved. They knew what we were doing for Alice and the other stuff that we had done. And so we did another shot of them all from the back. So some of them had long hair, and they're at the beach, we're on the beach, and there's some shoes, and we put them, so you see the back and the ocean in front of them, right? Again, we're not really featuring anybody. Where's the girl? She's not in the other shot, you know. And that was a open up. It was a gatefold album, so it was this big shot, you know, which was kind of what we were talking about before, where bands in the 70s, they would get control over everything, over the producing, the writing, the you know, everything. Where they recorded it, who printed it, who designed it. They had all the control. And part of the problem that, you know, record companies ran into was giving them too much. And this group, Sarah, got a gatefold album. Even though it was a paper mounted album, it wasn't 6 cents. It was probably more like 10 or 12 cents. And I don't know, I think they probably sold 10 albums, you know. I mean, so, and then when they were moving toward board, it got even more expensive. So we've talked about that in the past. But I think that, so we don't have a really good shot, okay, for an album cover. We got that one shot with two guys that aren't even in the group. And so I was a real big collector of, I would go to swap meets in New York. We'd go upstate and we'd go to these kind of swap meets, and I'd buy old photo albums and stuff and old prints and old magazines. I loved all that stuff. And I had a collection of black and white photographs. And I'm going through, I'm trying to figure out, what am I going to do for Sarah? And I did this lettering. And I think that the lettering, I don't know how well you can see it, but when you'll be able to blow it up, you'll see it. I think it's one of the most beautiful logos I've ever done. Okay. And I put it right up there with Alice Cooper. I put it right up there with the Bee Gees. I put it right up there with, you know, some of the best lettering I've ever done. John Mayall, crazy stuff. And this one is so beautiful. And
very elegant.
Yeah, very elegant. Again, Sarah, the lady, it should be elegant. And I had this picture of this beautiful woman, black and white, and she's holding these flowers. And I used to have, once we were getting established in the record business, everybody wanted to do album covers. All the designers wanted to do album covers. So we were constantly being bombarded with, you know, photographers reps, artists reps. And it got to the point where I just stopped seeing them. It would take up hours, because I don't want to just go, yeah, okay, here, leave your number at the door and I'll get back to you maybe. I spent time with people and would, you know, help them if I could and say, you know, did you try something like this? Or how was that shot? Or what kind of lighting did you use? And did you think about something like this? Help them, you know. It's easy to critique. It's very easy to be criticized. It's much harder to criticize and offer a solution. And that's the difference. If I spend time with somebody, I'm going to not only tell them what I think, and whether it's good, bad, or ugly, but I'm going to offer a solution, because that's how you learn. That's how you grow. You know, that's how you share and, you know, imitate, you know. And as we were getting more and more popular, you know, at a certain point, probably in the late 70s, I stopped for a while and just looked around and looked at the playing field, and we were being imitated. We were being copied. But nobody was doing what we were doing with getting into corporate America. I may have 350 pieces of original album cover art, okay, and music related art. I probably have 3 or 4 times that with corporate work. Okay, and people don't know that the same people that were doing Sarah were doing, you know, Flying Tiger Air Freight or Nestle or Kraft or, you know, all these corporations, Coca-Cola. I worked with some of the top, you know, consumer products companies in the world. Nestle and Kraft, the 2 largest in the world. Nestle's the largest. I worked for them for 30 years. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of people don't know that Drew Struzan, who did Black Sabbath, you know, paintings in this incredible movie poster, also did work for Flying Tiger Air Freight and Sizzler Steakhouses. You know, so that's, the book is going to be part of that. Sarah is going to be featured in that, because I really believe that, and one of the guys that called on me was a photo tent. He was a photographer and he could tint photos. So I gave him that photo and he tinted it, and he did just a beautiful job. And I know I have an album somewhere, and when I do find it, I'm going to take a better photograph of it. But you can see it online. I mean, it's hard to find because they didn't really do much after that. You know, they came at a time when Black Oak was, you know, starting to hit. There were, you know, Toulouse Street with the Doobie Brothers. I mean, they were really starting to have that sound, and there's only room for one or two. You know, I mean, as great as Black Oak was, other people surpassed them. You know, you look at Leonard Skinner, you look at, you know, the Doobie Brothers, you look at, you know, Marshall Tucker, you know, band. You know, there are a lot of really great Southern sound bands, rock bands, and sometimes it doesn't pay to be first.
You're very right about that, Ernie.
Yeah, especially these days. I mean, I think that that's why you see a lot of mediocre stuff, because it doesn't pay to be original. Because you can spend all your time creating something really good and trying to trademark it, and somebody gets a hold of it. If it takes off, they get a hold of it, make 2 or 3 things change, and boom, you're done, and they rip you off. And there you sit. You know, I mean, it's a strange world today. You know, it really is. And innovation still will always be there, you know, and greatness will always be there. I try to do everything that I do. I tell people I move good to great. That's what I do. Okay. People will give you good and go, oh, that's great. That's really it. And they'll settle for that. Mediocrity or good. Good is not good enough. You know, just like failure is never an option. It's never an option. You start taking it as an option, the next thing you know, you're hooked. You know, it's worse than cocaine. You know, it really is. So, but anyway, so what you see there is I tried to blow up the lettering so you can see it's very Art Nouveau, very feminine. The whole cover is very feminine, you know, and and then the back cover is all them sitting on the bench, you know, these guys, and no girl, and it is no lady. And you know, I think they were really trying to be clever on that, you know, and God bless them, you know. I mean, their music is great. I don't know if you got a chance to listen to any of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was blown away. I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah.
And I kept thinking, because, you know, my husband was very blessed, you know, in the early 70s to be part of progressive radio as a DJ in Baltimore. And I kept thinking, why didn't we ever see this as a promotional album? We had so many, but this one never came across. It was unfortunate.
And I think that I heard somewhere that a couple of the guys went on to do other stuff. It's like Tommy, the drummer in Black Oak, is now with Whitesnake and was been with these other bands, and they do move on. But I don't, for the life of me, I couldn't find out. I could barely find out anything about this album. And it's a great album. You're right. And I'll tell you, one of my favorite instruments. I'm not a big instrument guy. My thing is the voice, the singer. Okay, but instruments are cool. And Tom Nunes plays a dobro on this album that just, I mean, they're great musicians, and, you know, they don't give any credit for the singer, and I'm not even quite sure who the singer is. You know, we never got to go into a studio with them. They kind of came and went, and we were so busy with other stuff that they never reached back out. Sometimes bands would keep coming back. Sometimes we did one thing, and that was it. Black Sabbath, we did one thing. Rolling Stones, one thing. Cheech and Chong, 2 things, you know, Black Oak, 7, 8 things, and Alice, 13 things. So some of them kept, the Doors, 1 thing, you know, but we tried to make each one of those things monumental and timeless. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I love about how I do stuff. I don't follow trends, and I don't follow fads. I try to do stuff that will be just like the Beatles. You can listen to a lot of the Beatles music, even the Stones, a lot of those bands that are still around today, they're great, Al. And it sounds like it was recorded yesterday. That's why 18, you know, for Alice is always such a big hit. You know, I mean, they have that timelessness to it. And I've always tried to do that with the stuff that I've done. You know, I can show you everything that I've done, and you'd never know that the same person did it. You know, and I really pride myself on that, because that's a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing, you know, and so I try, and that's where I came up with, well, I want to continue making history instead of becoming it. And you know, in the back of my mind, I'm saying, like other people have said, hey man, you are history, you know, and you keep on creating it, you know, so, you know, don't fool yourself. You've made history. So, but nothing is more pleasing right now than me being with you on the block with such great people. I mean, really, every show is just, I learned so much, you know, and you're a really great teacher. You really are. And you've got a great, you've got a great personality on the air. You know, I mean, you really do. And like your husband Tom, he's got one of the best radio voices I think I've ever heard. You know, he's just awesome. Some people have it, some don't. I remember I was working with a client, and it was a food net with a product for Nestle, and we needed to do a radio spot, and I needed a particular kind of sound voice. And yeah, there's some people, and you call them, they have agents, and I was in a Denny's, and I'm going out to the cash register, and I hear this voice. And it was this guy who had the exact perfect voice that we were looking for. And I gave him my card, and he ended up doing the commercial with us. But he was there in the Denny's. I mean, how the hell are you going to, you know, he was a radio guy. He was a radio guy. He did stuff like that. But, you know, he didn't have an agent. He was an older gentleman. It was perfect. It was perfect. It was for cheese. I did a lot of crazy stuff for Nestle.
You've enlightened us too with Sarah, because I would have never known, you know, that this band ever existed.
Yeah.
And it was something, the artwork, first of all, is beautiful. The logo is really nice.
Yeah.
You know, and just finding out that they even existed, that they put out some great music. I have to thank you very much.
Oh, no, thank you for letting me have the time to do it. And now we come down to the important part, the songs.
Yes.
Okay? And I listened to that album a few times when we were doing it. And then I've listened to it recently. And it was like visiting an old friend. Okay. There, for me, Mother Mary, Father John is an amazing cut. Okay.
Yes,
and it starts out kind of strange, but then it starts really building, and they were just incredible. It's an incredible song. And Hammer Me Down is another one that I would suggest. And then, you know, whichever one you want to do. I mean, and you know, if I were you, I'd play all of them because they're so great. And you know, there were a lot of, you know, it's like, and it's always been that way. I remember when I was a kid and I was buying 45s, and you'd get these incredible groups, and they would have one song, and then they would go away, you know, and then it got into a thing where if you had a hit, you made the next single sound like that hit, because people were familiar with it. And a perfect example of that is Lou Reed, when he did Walk on the Wild Side, and then he did Berlin, and people just weren't ready for it. They wanted more of Walk on the Wild Side, even though the Beatles changed all that. When the Beatles came along, I remember the first Beatles album, and it was great. And then you expect the next album to be like that one, but it ain't. It's different. And you're all of a sudden, you're like, whoa. And of course, it was happening when I was in, you know, out of high school and into college and down into what we talked about, that whole, you know, Berkeley, Pacific Island, or California College of Arts and Crafts, and the crazy campuses there. But, you know, just crazy stuff. And so those would be the songs that I would pick. And, you know, Stan and Bill, you know, they were amazing. Tom, you know, they were just great guys, and they were really, but it was like one time, you know, and it's like falling in love, and then you never see that person again. We've all had that experience in our life. You know, I remember I was probably 13, and I was in Santa Cruz, and there was this girl, and she was my age, and we kind of bumped into each other and of course, you know, at 13, I'm just discovering girls and how cool they are. You know, you don't throw rocks at them anymore, pull their hair, or any of that stuff. And we just, it was like peas and carrots. We spent the day together, and then I never saw her again. And it was like, and I'll never forget that. You know, I think sometimes of Citizen Kane when he's on his deathbed and he's Rosebud, you know, and nobody can figure out what the hell Rosebud is. It's just Sled when he was a kid, you know. I mean, I don't know. Life is a funny thing, you know.
It sure is.
I really thank you so much for letting me spend this time with you and the neighbors. And we're looking at a new year coming up, and hopefully it'll be bigger and better for all of us. That's my prayer, you know, and thank you so much.
You're welcome, Ernie. We are so excited, and thank you. I consider you one of the blessings for 2022. Even though I've known you before, it's such an honor to have you on Ernie's Corner.
It's an honor for me, too, and we got great neighbors, and I love being here.